Pull up a stool, my friends. The fire's low, the whiskey's smooth, and tonight I'm going to take you somewhere most people only read about in history books. December 25th, 1991, Christmas night, Moscow. While the rest of the world was opening presents and watching It's a Wonderful Life, I was sitting in a black Volga sedan on a snow-packed side street 3 blocks from the Kremlin, waiting for the most important defection of my career and watching an empire die in real time. Here's how I got there. 6 weeks earlier, I'd been pulled out of a counterintelligence op in Vienna and handed a single photograph. A man in his late 50s. Silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of face that disappears in a crowd. His name was Dmitry Volkov, senior cryptographer, 30 years inside the GRU Soviet military intelligence. And 3 weeks prior, he'd walked into our Helsinki embassy, slid a thumb drive across the counter, and whispered 2 words to the duty officer. He whispered, "Asymmetric keys." That thumb drive contained fragments of the Soviet Union's entire nuclear command encryption architecture. Not the weapons themselves, the language they spoke to each other, the codes that told a missile whether to launch or stand down. In the wrong hands, that information didn't just start wars, it ended them permanently. Volkov wanted out. His wife had died the previous spring, his son had emigrated to Canada. He had nothing left to protect and everything left to offer. All he asked in return was a new life, a decent apartment, and access to a good chess club. He was definitely my kind of man. The extraction plan was clean. Christmas night was chosen deliberately. Skeleton security crews, distracted guards, a city half drunk on whatever contraband vodka had made it through the shortages. I was running undercover as a Finnish trade attaché named Mekinen, complete with the passport, the wool overcoat, and enough functional Russian to order dinner and argue about football. The handoff point was a Church of the Nativity on Ostojenka Street. Appropriate, given the date. Volkov would attend the Christmas service, one of the first legally permitted Orthodox services in decades, Gorbachev having loosened that particular screw. And when the congregation filed out, I would be standing near the east door holding a specific edition of Pushkin's collected poems. He would bump into me. I would apologize in Finnish accented Russian. We would walk to the car together like old acquaintances. Simple, elegant. The best plans always are, except at 7:02 p.m. Mikhail Gorbachev went on Soviet state television and announced his resignation as president of the USSR. The Soviet Union, 74 years old, nuclear armed, and paranoid to its last breath, ceased to exist at 7:32 p.m. Moscow time. And every security apparatus in the city went into full alert simultaneously. My driver, a local asset we called Sparrow, gripped a wheel and looked at me in the rearview mirror. "This is bad," he said, which was the understatement of the century. GRU officers who'd spent their entire careers serving a state that no longer existed were either celebrating, defecting themselves, or deciding tonight was the night to settle old scores. Nobody knew which way any given man with a gun was going to fall. I had 20 minutes to make a decision. Abort and pull Volkov back into the cold for weeks while we rebuilt the operation. Or go, I buttoned my overcoat, tucked the Pushkin under my arm, and stepped out into the snow. The church was packed. Standing room only Muscovites who hadn't been inside a church since childhood suddenly remembering they were Orthodox after all. Candles everywhere. The smell of incense and old wood and wet wool coats. The choir singing something that sounded like the world ending and beginning at the same time. I found Volkov near the east door, exactly where he was supposed to be. He looked 10 years older than his photograph. His eyes were red, whether from the cold or from grief. I didn't ask. A man watching the only world he'd ever known dissolve on live television deserves his private moment. He saw the Pushkin. He saw me. He gave the smallest nod I've ever received in 30 years of field work. We walked out together into the Moscow night. The drive to the extraction point took 47 minutes through streets that couldn't decide whether to riot or weep. We passed 3 different groups of men who'd torn the Soviet emblems off their own uniforms and were standing in the snow, not sure what to do next. Sparrow ran 2 checkpoints, not because we had to, but because the guards had simply walked away from their posts. An empire doesn't end with a bang. It ends with men walking away from their posts in the snow on Christmas night. We made the handoff outside the city. Volkov crossed into Finnish territory at 2:14 a.m. on December 26th. I was back in Vienna by New Year's Eve. He got his apartment. He got his chess club. Last I heard, he was still playing competitive chess in a suburb of Washington, D.C., giving nothing away to anyone. The Soviet Union died on Christmas night 1991. I was there to catch one small piece of it before it hit the floor. That's the thing about this business, my friends. History happens to everyone, but only a few of us get to stand in the room where it falls apart. So here's to Dmitry Volkov, wherever you are tonight, and here's to every man who ever had the courage to walk out of a church into the snow and trust a stranger with a book of Pushkin, Slanta. Until next weekend when I'll have another tale waiting. The fiction is my shield. The truth is yours to claim. See you beyond the great filter.